So it's not your right to have an abortion. There's nothing in the Constitution about abortion being a right. You want abortion because that child is inconvenient for you. So let's backtrack how you got pregnant in the first place, right?
Right.
Why weren't you being more responsible? See, the problem is abortion has made it okay for people to be reckless, to be irresponsible, and to say, I'm going to have sex, but not really think about the consequences if you were to get pregnant. And so they get pregnant and they're like, oh, I don't want this baby. I'm too young. I don't have the money. And this is just a huge inconvenience. Bam, abortion. But then you're killing the baby.
Welcome, Monica Yatooma, to the Habibi Hour. Monica is running for Oakland County Commissioner, running on fiscal responsibility and, of course, protecting our children. And with protecting our children, a big thing that's going on right now is the topic of abortion, because Roe v. Wade is back in the Supreme Court. They're taking a look at that, and it could possibly be overturned. So, Monica, we want to welcome you and allow you to talk about this.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So when it comes to Roe v. Wade, the original case, right, there's a lot of kind of questions about its legal standing, the way that it came about and what it's actually based on, the fact that it's, actually a right to privacy. That's how it came about. And, since then, 60 million babies have been murdered, a very big amount of human life that's been lost. We're very happy to have you on because obviously you're a woman and you have 3 kids of your own. Joe, you also have a kid of your own. So a very unique perspective that we can get on the discussion. What are your thoughts just of what's going on and kind of your perspective as a mother, a woman, and somebody that's running for a political position?
Yeah, so for me to see something monumental like this actually come to the Supreme Court and possibly even have Roe v. Wade overturned, that in itself is a landmark. That's a really big deal. And I just feel like that's God working in his ways. Yeah. Right. So we never thought this was something that could happen. But of course, you have the case in Mississippi that kind of got the ball rolling with all this.
Right.
And landed on the doorsteps of the Supreme Court. So I'm really excited that this is on the table and we could possibly overturn Roe. I think it's necessary. Obviously, I'm pro-life. Mm-hmm. So I'm all about it. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, definitely. And really what's causing the main, I would say ruckus is this has been something that has been deemed a human right since 1973, right? And it's coming up now. And even in our own community, it's something that it maybe isn't touched on as much. As far as it being a human right, what are your thoughts on that? And where do we go from here as to how to decipher if that should be a human right or if that should be left up to the states to decide or if that should even be allowed at all? Sure.
So this country was founded on everybody having our constitutional rights, human rights, right? It's important. Right. And so the mother absolutely should have her rights. But what about the baby? It's a human life. Right. The science says that it's a living, breathing human at conception. So why is it okay to harm a baby in the womb? It's still murder. It doesn't matter if that baby is preborn or if that baby is 2 years old. You're killing that baby in the womb can feel pain. I've literally watched videos of abortions where you can see the child in the womb squirming, trying to get away from the vacuum because they can feel it.
It's so sad.
Yeah.
And you've had your own kids, so
yeah,
you know how precious they are.
I do.
They're harmful. They don't,
harmless.
They're not even,
harmless.
Harmless. Sorry. And they're not even getting an opportunity to see life.
No, they're not. And it's very sad.
Yeah.
That whole, like I said, it's unquestionable legal standing of how that came about. And the whole thing will fall on its face if you consider a fetus a human life.
Sure.
And, under the 14th Amendment, that's how, before we know about our nation's history, right? So women weren't considered, full people and a lot of, minorities weren't considered actual people. So there's so much, fight on the left for those groups, and rightly so. And actually, conservatives had a lot to do with that in the beginning as well, back in those days. But fetuses are a group of people who are not protected now, and that's actually a giant group of people. It's actually the most precious.
Right.
So, how did we get to that point of where fetuses are not considered human life? That's a very delicate line to play with.
Roe v. Wade was a big part of that. So, and just to backtrack a little bit, so Mississippi passed the Gestational Act in 2018. That's how this all got rolling.
Right.
And so pro-choice groups, and so Mississippi has a really big women's health provider that does abortions. It's like their sole biggest provider in Mississippi. They came and said, no, we're not okay with this. What the Gestational Act said was no more abortions after 15 weeks unless it's a medical emergency or a severe fetal abnormality.
Mm-hmm.
And so the pro-choice people went crazy.
Right.
And mind you, this act wasn't really asking for a lot. It just said no abortions after 15 weeks. 15 weeks is a decent amount of time for you to decide, hey, I want this baby or not, right? But
right.
Of course, they want to fight it. And they wanted to argue it. So it was struck down by 2 federal courts. And so the state said, we're taking this to the Supreme Court. That's how we landed at the doorsteps of the Supreme Court.
Right.
So Roe v. Wade, 1973. Norma McCorvey was her name. Mm-hmm. And so for purposes of privacy, in the case, they called her Jane Roe. That's where Roe came from. Wade was Henry Wade. He was the district attorney in Texas. So she had 2 children already, gave them up for adoption. Well, she got pregnant again, unplanned. And she's like, oh, I don't want this kid. Like, I'm not ready to have a baby. And so she couldn't find an abortion provider because back then, Texas had it was not legal to have an abortion. She happened to find 2 female attorneys that said, oh, I want to take this case.
They were on their social justice whole thing. Yeah.
That's how Roe v. Wade started.
She was used in a way.
Yes. And so she won. She kept a low profile. She was an she was an abortion activist in the 1980s. And then the funny thing is that most people don't know, in the mid-90s, she met the head of a large anti-abortion group, the head of the group. Became very close, and she actually herself ended up turning to Catholicism. So she became a Catholic, and then she became anti-abortion. Mm-hmm. So the person that started Roe v. Wade, Jane Roe, right? That's her, Jane Roe. She actually is now against abortion. Nobody ever talks about that. They will never tell you that. Mm-hmm. So these are the important points to consider. And yeah, absolutely, like, human rights are important, like you touched on, but we have to consider the right of the baby in the womb. But that's how we got started. So it was Mississippi. They got the ball rolling. We ended up on the doorsteps of the Supreme Court. Obviously, the leaked documents, Justice Clarence Thomas came out and said, yes, this document is legitimate. We haven't made an official ruling yet, but because the document was leaked, we kind of know which way they're going.
Right.
And that's why we're seeing all this upheaval and all these people going crazy and screaming that, women are losing their rights, and women are not losing their rights.
Isn't the leak a little suspect? Because usually leaks don't happen like that typically, do they?
It's very suspect. And this is huge. And the news won't even cover this. Like, this is a big deal. A leak in the Supreme Court is such a big deal because the Supreme Court, they take so many measures, so many necessary steps for making sure that everything's completely private that goes to the Supreme Court. I mean, they shred things not just once, but twice, 3 times because it can't get in the wrong hands.
Super important.
Very important. So we have a super social justice concerned law clerk that's very right and liberal. They have an idea of who it is, that worked for one of the liberal justices that thought, I'm pissed off, so I'm just going to leak this, which is not cool, not okay.
Right.
And I hope they're prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on when people say, like, my body, my choice, my rights? So if abortion became illegal, what do we say to that? Is if it's their rights to have an abortion? So
it's not your right to have an abortion. There's nothing in the Constitution about abortion being a right. You want abortion because that child is inconvenient for you. So let's backtrack how you got pregnant in the first place, right?
Right.
Why weren't you being more responsible? See, the problem is abortion has made it okay for people to be reckless, to be irresponsible, and to say, I'm going to have sex, but not really think about the consequences if you were to get pregnant. And so they get pregnant and they're like, oh, I don't want this baby. I'm too young. I don't have the money. And this is just a huge inconvenience. Bam, abortion. But then you're killing the baby. So let's just say abortion became illegal, right? This moved forward. It became illegal. You can't do it. It's a felony. It's a good thing because it will force people to be more socially responsible and to think about their actions and the choices that they make before getting pregnant. That's an important part of culture too.
People think that if the case gets overturned, then automatically abortion is going to be illegal. And that's not necessarily the case. What happens is it gets kicked down to a state level, and then the states get to decide whether they want to do it at, a heartbeat, or if they want to do it at second trimester, third trimester. So when you dig deeper into it, you realize that all the things you're seeing on social media, all the people that are protesting, storming churches, they're doing it all in vain because the case is really misconstrued.
Correct. That's correct, actually. So that's all it's saying. So if the Supreme Court comes back and says, yeah, we're going to overturn it, you're right. All it's doing is passing the buck down to the states. So the states can make a decision. So each state has a different law on abortion. So here in Michigan, there was a law in 1931 that was passed that actually makes abortion a felony. Mm-hmm. So Michigan will be one of the states where you'll see a lot of riot and a lot of people getting upset. But that's exactly right. It's just getting pushed down to the states so they can decide what's good for them. Now, the Roe v. Wade case was decided upon viability of the fetus, right? So Roe v. Wade said around that second trimester, that 20 to 24 week mark, because they say then the baby's moving, it's kicking. So that's what Roe v. Wade said. That was the precedent that it set, was viability. But the pro-life movement says, no, okay, there's a heartbeat at conception. It's a human life at conception. It's living at conception. So what each state will do, I don't know, but it's going to be how they interpret viability, whether it's at that point where the baby's moving or whether it's the heartbeat.
Right. And those people anyways, they follow the law, right? So if it does become illegal, they got to follow the law.
You would think. But our AG, Dana Nessel, is already saying that if Roe v. Wade gets overturned, she's not going to force our prosecutors to prosecute if somebody goes and gets an abortion, knowing that we have a law in Michigan on abortion passed in 1931 that says it's a felony.
Right.
It's a felony unless the mother is in harm's way, which even that's a gray area, because then let's just say mother has heart disease and getting pregnant ups her chances of heart issues 20 to 30%. So is that okay then to abort the baby? We don't know. That's the kind of stuff we need to decipher and filter through and see what's right, what's wrong. But I can tell you already that our AG, she's not going to prosecute anything when it comes to abortion. And that's a problem too. That's a whole other.
Yeah. Rimson made a great point, because if it were to be overturned, like he said, it would go to the states, right? It's not just a blanket ban. But I really want to focus on that shaky legal ground that I was talking about, because if you look back when they made that ruling and that decision, the Supreme Court, I'm sure everybody knows, is not meant to pass laws. They're meant to strictly adhere to the Constitution and decide whether something should be, is legal or not based on that document. And where in the Constitution could you possibly pull out from it to say that this is a human right? So it begs the question to say, what is the motive here? Because what I'm leading to is it's actually in business incentive and capitalistic incentive to have abortion be legal. We know that there is things that are used from abortions for business, for profit, for gain. Sure. So there's just the whole legal, ground that it stands on is just ridiculous. So getting it pushed to the states, what's the outrage about that? There's nothing to be outraged about pushing that to the states, because it's definitely not a human right.
No, I agree with you. It's not in the Constitution. And actually, I think it was Justice Alito that came out and said, I don't know why you guys are expecting us to make a decision on this. We're giving this back to the states because the Constitution is clear. Right. Abortion is not a human right. It was never written into the Constitution originally. So we're going to push this back down to the states and let them decide. Right. So they said the same exact thing that you just said.
Monica, when it comes to the pro-choice movement, there's a lot of people that say, if you ban abortions, women are going to get them in unsafe ways. This is something that is just a part of life that's going to happen. And there's a lot of people that believe, not everybody should be having children. And even though they do make choices where they end up becoming pregnant, that's not to say that they should carry out that pregnancy to term. To that, you say what?
So to what part of that? The back alley abortions?
Back alley abortions and just the fact that not everybody should be having children, right?
Well, no, not everybody should be having children.
Right.
But you know what? No, they shouldn't. But look, we've got so many parents out there that want to adopt. And so that's a big thing too. And so there's also a lot of pregnancy centers out there led by pro-life advocacy groups that provide parental counseling, financial assistance, housing assistance, all this stuff that free STI testing, diapers, food, formula, all the stuff somebody that I guess would claim that they're not ready to be having a baby, it provides them all the stuff that they would need. So if somebody's not ready to have a baby, or maybe they shouldn't be having a baby, there are definitely resources out there to get them ready or maybe to better prepare them to having a baby. And look, if you go through all that and you still think like, okay, I don't need to be having this baby, or maybe the people around you, your support group keeps telling you like, I don't think you're ready for this, you shouldn't be having this baby. Again, we go back to adoption. There's always that option if you really don't want the child.
So this is a big question that it comes up. So what about the woman that has to go through 9 months of pregnancy?
Is going through 9 months of pregnancy hurting that woman?
No, but she has to go through it. Maybe she doesn't want to go through it. What do you say to
Yeah.
What do you say to that?
So she's saying it's an inconvenience. Yeah. Well, I say to that, that child didn't ask for you to become pregnant with that child. And so that child deserves a fair chance. So just like the mother carrying the child has her rights, so does that baby. Every life has value to it and deserves to be protected under the Constitution.
Great. Facts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, Monica, I think you make a good point, because your right to not be inconvenienced doesn't triumph the right of the baby that has a heartbeat by the 6th week and limbs by the 12th week. And I think it all comes back to the social perspective. People want to be able to go out and make decisions that they can then get out of with like a get out of jail free type card.
And that's exactly what they're doing. So we touched on that a little bit earlier, where people think like, oh, I can have sex and go do what I want. And if I get pregnant, I'll just go have an abortion. Like it's nothing. See, the problem is morality has gone out the door. Yeah. And right now with COVID and everything that's been happening and people being masked, it's worse. There's zero empathy towards anybody you see in a mask. You can't feel anything towards that person, right? They're trying to do the same thing with abortion. They want you to have no feeling towards that baby, but that baby is living. It's a human life. And like I said, it has rights just like we do.
Yeah. What blows my mind is people think that once you have the abortion, all your issues are gone. But statistics would say otherwise, because people that get abortions end up struggling at a higher rate with mental illnesses, with anxiety, depression, way after the abortion. And then a group of people that never get considered are the fathers and then the siblings of the kids that are being aborted. So fathers play a pretty big role in making a baby.
Yeah,
they're 50% of it.
They're half the role.
They are half the role. So yeah. It's kind of mind blowing that fathers don't really get a say in any of that.
It is mind blowing, and unfortunately, there really aren't any laws or anything on the books, saying, hey, that father should have the right. It all they put it all on the woman, but at the same time, that would be a non-issue if abortion wasn't an issue, right? And then the father would get a say. And look, if the father doesn't want to be present in that baby's life and the mom says, oh, I can't do this by myself. Okay, so we resort back to that. Their adoption is an option. And then there's plenty of resources out there to help get you ready. But something else you touched on, most women that get abortions end up regretting it. You're right. And the statistics show that abortion is completely traumatizing. And it's traumatizing to the body too. What they don't tell you is that a lot of women who have abortions go on not ever being able to get pregnant again because it's so traumatizing to the body. It's a very invasive surgery.
How is that the process?
So they literally go in so they inject the baby. I forget what it's called that they inject them with, but it kind of burns the baby inside out. It burns them alive. So and we hope that the baby's dead, but there are some times where some babies are born alive. But in the case where the baby's dead, or even if they're alive, they have to go in there. And what they do is they break apart each limb by limb, and they go in with a suction vacuum and take each limb out piece by piece. That is how an abortion is completed. And then in the process, they have to scrape. They're inside of you scraping in case they missed anything. They don't want to miss a finger. They don't want to, because you could develop an infection. So it's a very dangerous procedure. No one ever talks about any of that.
Yeah, what doesn't make sense to me is if you get an abortion at like the 7th, 8th, even 9th month, that baby, if it was born premature, would be a baby. So what's the difference between the baby being inside of the mother's womb and being outside and being, premature born? And people will make the argument that, hey, a baby is reliant on the mother when it's inside of the body. But if you've ever seen a 3-month-old baby, so is a 3-month baby. It's a
Right.
terrible argument.
Right. That was part of Roe v. Wade. Remember I mentioned viability? So they said that's why they decided on that 20 to 24 week mark, because they said at that mark, if let's just say baby's born premature, technically at that age, they can survive outside the womb. So anything past 20 weeks, that's a baby,
Right.
full blown baby. So at that point, anybody getting an abortion past, and I'm being very generous here, 20 weeks, you're killing a child.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
I mean, really, what's gone on is, and you alluded to it, is it's a culture, the degradation of morality and culture and society. And have we gone too far down that path to even come back from that? Because there's people that will say, for example, people will continue to get pregnant. People will continue to have sex. That's just going to happen irresponsibly or responsibly.
Sure.
And there's people out there that say, yes, you raise the adoption thing and you raise the clinics that help mothers get prepared if they decide to keep the baby. But at the end of the day, there's some people that just say that even though adoption is available, like we see foster homes, you see things like this, very, sad stories and people
Sure.
that have just been dealt very bad hands.
Yeah.
So there's people that make that argument too. Why bringing something into this world that is not going to be cared for the right way, especially when it's caught very early? That's what a lot of pro-choicers would say. And to that, do you have anything to say to that?
Well, I would just say, again, I mean, okay, let's just say I had a picture of a baby on this side and a picture of a baby on this side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And let's just use rape as an example, right? And low-income situation, the mother was raped, drugs are involved, just pretty bad case. So baby here, baby here. And I asked you, which one of these babies was conceived by rape? Could you tell me?
Nope. You wouldn't know.
No. So the value of each one of those babies' lives, the baby that was conceived in really bad situation like what you just mentioned, and the baby, let's just say, my baby, I got pregnant, right? We're good. We want to have a baby. That's great. But the value of their lives are completely equal.
But what if we fast forward 20 years and then look at them? Of course, it's not guaranteed in either case, but would there be a higher chance of that other baby you'd be able to tell which one was,
So absolutely, we take that risk, right? We take that risk every day when babies are born.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have plenty of babies from situations like what you were referring to that grow up to be doctors,
Yep.
lawyers, Supreme Court justices. I mean, they do great. It's really, it's environment and it's, I guess, their support, not just their parents. But again, and then you're getting into, we have child protective services for that, right? So if a baby's really born in a rough situation, they step in and help that baby, whether it's giving them to a family member or putting them in the foster system. Obviously, we don't want them in the foster system, but it happens. Like you mentioned, it happens. But it's a lot more rare than you think. Most of these babies go on to live very satisfying and fulfilling lives.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of babies who almost were aborted that ended up becoming very successful. And
Yeah.
of course, those cases
We
exist.
have some in Congress.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
It's all about the opportunity. You
Yeah.
give them the opportunity,
Yeah.
So
it's giving people an opportunity.
instead of aborting them, you're giving them an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one thing that gets overlooked a lot is the whole adoption thing, because right now in America, there are 2 million families that are waiting to adopt kids.
Sure.
And there's actually more families that are waiting to adopt kids that there are kids available for adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So in instances where you don't want to keep the kid, but you still want to give them a good life, there's opportunity for
But
that.
foster homes exist.
That's a separate thing, yeah.
There's kids that, even though there are families to adopt them, not every kid gets adopted.
Nope,
Right.
not every kid gets adopted, but most newborns get adopted. I mean, you're talking 9 out of 10. It's very rare that a newborn doesn't get adopted. The kids that end up in foster care are those kids that end up being born into a bad situation.
Sure.
And so the state will step in and say, I feel like this kid would be better off in the foster care system. Let's try to give him another family.
Yeah.
Or let's try to have this foster care system, support them. But again, foster care is not permanent. It's basically a stepping stone to getting you in with the right family.
Right.
And you're right. Some kids don't get adopted. It's funny, actually. I don't know where I was out to eat the other day, and our waiter, at Shenandoah, the waiter, this guy, he was so cool. And we just started talking to him, and he started telling us his story. And he's like, I didn't have a good childhood growing up. And I kind of got bounced around, and I was in the foster care system. And so he was telling us he's on his own. And, we noticed him because he was just a really hard worker, and he was great. He was good at what he did.
Yeah.
And he was telling us, like, Shenandoah was his day job, and then he also had a nighttime job. But like he was doing great and he was happy. And he specifically said to us, you know, I don't let the way that I was brought up interfere with what I'm doing now. Because I know, because I've had opportunity to do better and I've taken advantage of it. And so it's so funny. It just came to me right now. But it's all about opportunity and environment, you know?
Whatever we could say about this issue, we've said a lot of great things and you've added a lot of great insights. So thank you for that.
Of course.
But whichever side you're on, what just blows my mind, and I'm sure Rimson and Joe, you guys agree, that the passion on the other side is very interesting, to say the least, because how could you be that passionate about taking life? At the end of the day, if you have that view, that's fine. Support your view, defend your view. But the passion for it and the kind of the defiance about it is just kind of weird. Because they don't look at it like it's life. They look at it like it's a clump of cells. Right.
But when you get pregnant and you have a baby inside of you, we're human, right? So what do I have inside? Do I have a dolphin inside of me? It's a baby.
Right.
It's
a unicorn.
Human, yeah.
They say unicorns.
Yeah, it's a human being. And so, but that's why it's so easy for them to get so crazy about it. It's because they don't even look at it like it's a living life. But if somebody with common sense said to them, and rape is a big thing. Oh, if the woman gets raped, she shouldn't be forced. But that baby didn't choose that either. The value of their life is not any less. And so let's just say a woman who got raped continues to go through, goes through the 9 months of the pregnancy, has the baby. Okay. The baby's 2 years old and the baby just really looks like the rapist and it's triggering the woman, right? And she's just can't take it anymore. So would we take that 2-year-old? Do we kill the 2-year-old?
Right.
She would go to jail, right?
Right. Well, they would argue that they would want to terminate that as soon as possible.
But she decided to have the baby.
Right. In that case, that is
so it's fair game. Fair game.
You cannot do that after that point.
So the point I'm making is that 2-year-old starts triggering her because the baby gets older and that baby looks like the rapist, like her rapist. But we can't kill the 2-year-old, right? You can, but if she does, what happens?
Jail for life.
Okay. So what's the difference if I'm killing that baby inside my womb?
Facts.
Right.
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah. It's just it's nuttiness. It's craziness. It drives me crazy.
I think like just in life, you know, when alcohol was illegal, people still found a way to drink, but it was less. So if we made abortions illegal, there would still be abortions, but it would be much less. So I would rather have much less abortions than more abortions. So I feel like if we did make it illegal, it would stop a lot of people from having abortions. What do you think about that?
I agree. You know what it would do? It would force people to be responsible and mature and to take accountability for their actions, because in this day and age, we're living in a world where people are not doing that. And so abortion is just another thing that gives them an easy way out to say, I don't want to be responsible for anything. I'm just, F it. I'm going to have sex. And if I get pregnant, hey, I'll just go get an abortion. But if it becomes illegal, they have to stop and actually think, right? And then actually use common sense and use their brain and say, let me take 10 steps back and let me be more responsible before I have sex to prevent an unwanted pregnancy.
And there's a lot of options along the way to prevent that too.
Yeah, there is.
Or even if you are sexually active.
Right. And whether you believe in them or not, whatever your religious affiliation is, that's, you know, like it doesn't matter. If you want contraceptives, they're there for you. And it's an option. Like you have options before getting pregnant. If you get pregnant, that means you blew through everything or exhausted everything, or you just didn't even think twice.
Just complete negligence.
Exactly. Complete negligence, right? Just like if I decided to drink and get in my car and go drive and I killed somebody, I would go to jail for that.
Right.
What's the difference here?
Yeah.
Right?
Speaking of that, the funny thing is if you get in your car and you get in an accident with a female who's pregnant, you can get charged for a double homicide.
That's a really great point. Yeah.
You're very smart.
You reminded me.
Yeah.
You reminded me. There's just, I feel like there's a lot of hypocrisy. Another thing is the argument of my body, my choice.
Right.
Those same people that will argue that point will also argue that you should be vaxxed. Mm-hmm. And you see it from the same side.
It's extremely contradicting. It's the my body, my choice, but then the state comes down and says, get vaccinated or lose your job. And they're like, yeah, get vaccinated, save a life. Well, what life are we saving? I mean, the vaccines have traumatized more lives than they've saved, right? And again, that's a whole nother topic.
100%.
Yeah, it's a whole nother topic, but it's very contradicting, right? So it's when the narrative is convenient for them, they're all about it. They're protesting, they're all over it, they're on it. But if it's not convenient for them, then obviously you're going to see what we're seeing.
Well, we'll definitely see what happens with what's going to happen with the case. That's obviously they're reviewing.
Sure.
And we'll see if that gets banned and passed down to the states or if it stands. But talk a little bit about your Oakland County Commissioner bid.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm not a politician. I've never been in politics. But so I have 3 young kids. And my kids are on the younger side, 11, 9, and 7. Or actually just turned 8, I'm sorry. And so I got started with Parents Against Mandates. I'm one of the co-founders. So thousands of parents deep. And it started because of the mask mandate. But it kind of spiraled from there because when we started digging into the schools and everything, the curriculum and everything they were doing, we realized there was a lot more than mask mandates that we needed to be fighting. Yeah. So literally, I mean, they're literally indoctrinating the kids. And the stuff they're kind of weaving into the curriculum, like CRT and DEI and all this equity stuff. I mean, why do I need to know about that in a physics class? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that deep dive landed me on the doorsteps of my legislators, my commissioners. And so with some of them, I now have great relationships with. And some of them, I got no response at all. They were doing nothing.
Yeah.
So one of those people that did nothing is my opponent. And so that's why I decided to run for commission because I'm just one of those people, you know, I'm always up for a challenge. But she just made me so mad that I was like, okay, if you're not even going to respond or do anything, then we're going to get somebody who will. And so I entered into the race.
Do it myself.
Yeah. And so it ended up turning into this big thing because people got excited, right? The Republican Party reached out to me and they were so excited that I was running. I got all these great endorsements, like from senators and state reps and like the parent groups. So it's just been great. But that's how I got into it. You know, listen, it's not for everybody, but I like to put my money where my mouth is. And I said, I'm not going to just sit here and complain. I'm going to step up. I'm going to show my kids how it's done. And we're going to do it. And I want to be able to, for my kids to have opportunity that I had, that my parents came here, risked their lives to give to me. If I can't have that, if I can't take those same opportunities and those liberties and hand them down to my children, I'm doing something wrong.
Well said.
Yeah.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
I feel inspired.
When can we go make our voices heard to get you in place?
Well, I'll need you when I run for governor. I'm just kidding. So right now for the commission, I'm District 12. So if you guys know anybody that lives in Commerce, Wolverine Lake, White Lake, or Waterford, that's my district. It's about 70,000 constituents that I'd represent. But those are the people that can vote for me.
Okay.
Yep.
District 12, guys.
District 12,
yes.
And that's in August?
I do have a primary because I have an incumbent. That's August 2nd. So that's probably more important than anything because everybody that I meet is like, yeah, we love you. We're going to vote for you. But I need you to go out and vote on August 2nd in the primary so I can beat the other Republican. And then you can go vote for me in the general election in November.
Awesome. Thank you, Monica. We really appreciate it.
I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, thank you. If I could, squeeze in one more thing. Yeah. We're always looking for volunteers. So if anybody ever wants to volunteer, put up a yard sign, www.voteyatooma.com. And I'm on social media. Reach out to me anytime. I like to be accessible. I'm not above anything. I'll talk to anybody.
You heard her. Do it.